All right, so we're going to start discussing the Reformation. And so, what we need to understand with the Reformation is the root word is reform, which means that we're going to bring about change. So, when we discuss the Reformation, the first thing we're going to talk about is the Protestant Reformation. And so, what you need to do in your notes is where you see the word protest, you need to highlight that. And to protest means to go against or to change or to advocate for something. And you need to write that next to protest. And then I would like for you to highlight the word reform. So what is ultimately going to happen is that we're going to have a protest and somebody's going to go against something and ultimately draw an arrow that's going to cause reform, and reform means change. Write that above reform here, or Reformation. So when we talk about the Protestant Reformation, what you have to understand is that the original religion that all Christianity stems from is Judaism. Then you have Jesus, and then you have the Catholic Church. And so what's going to happen is that there's going to be an individual, and a lot of groups of people are going to align with this individual's point of views. They're going to protest against the Catholic Church because there's some injustices that are going on. And ultimately it will form a giant branch, or different branches, a giant tree of Christianity. Not just Catholicism or like the Catholic Church will exist anymore. There will be other branches of the Christian faith. So before you can reform, you have to have some problems. And so I'm going to discuss quickly the problems with the Catholic Church. First of all, there's corruption, abuse, and immorality. So that's corruption is being corrupt, or not necessarily sinister, but doing things that are not appropriate, and then abuse. So the first thing we need to talk about is the church is going to spend way too much money on like extravagant art projects. Remember, this is the Renaissance, so we're going to have giant buildings, gold statues, lots of gold, okay? And so when we discuss this, why are we putting so much gold in our church when we should be feeding the poor, helping people? So people lose respect for, and they're also going to question the church. Why do we have gold statues when we have people that are hungry on the street? Also, the church is going to sell indulgences to people to pay for art projects. So an indulgence is going to be a pardon that reduces the time in purgatory. So what they're going to tell people is, if you pay the church, we'll pray for you, and then hopefully you won't spend a lot of time in purgatory or even in hell. So in the Catholic faith, purgatory is in limbo. It's in between heaven and hell, and it's like a waiting station. And so they say that if you pay us these indulgences, we'll pray for your loved ones who have died, and they won't have to stay in purgatory as long. Here's my question to you. How can someone of the church make a judgment call like that? So the next thing you have to understand is that people are going to be way more loyal to their nationality or their national heritage than the church. So they're going to identify more with being from France or England or Germany than they will with whatever church they're with, which would be the Catholic Church during this time. So a couple of the early reformers during this time, John Wycliffe, which he believed that the church should give up all material goods. So he's openly saying, like, y'all having gold statues is not working. John Huss, which he preached against immorality and the worldliness of the Catholic Church. Okay? And then you also have not this guy, but the guy on the right, which is Martin Luther. Fun fact, Martin Luther King Jr., his father changed his own name to Martin Luther because he was inspired by the Martin Luther of the Renaissance. And so Martin Luther King Jr.'s father was involved in the civil rights movement, and they both were protesting the injustices of their groups in society. And so Martin Luther is going to be a protester. In 1517, he is going to take the 95 theses, which a thesis is like an idea or a statement. He had 95 of them, and he is going to nail them to a church door in Wittenberg, Germany, and they are 95 complaints against the Catholic Church. And this starts the Protestant Reformation, okay? I always tell the students to remember this. Martin Luther had 95 problems, but Jesus won one of them, okay? So a couple of things that he's going to talk about is the 95 Thesis was written in ancient Latin. Eventually it will be translated and it will be mass-produced so that people can share these ideas with Martin Luther. Couple of key points. Martin Luther is going to hone right in on the church and get after it. He's going to say God's grace cannot be won by good works. Heaven alone is needed to get to heaven. So pretty much what Martin Luther is going to say, and you can read these other 3 points as they're on the screen, he's going to say, you don't have to have the Catholic Church to know God. You can know him for yourself. And the Bible is going to be published in German. It's going to be mass-produced. And so ultimately, he's going to mass-produce the Bible, and many, many, many people are going to read it and realize that the Catholic Church was not doing right by the congregation. So here are a couple of reactions. First of all, Pope Leo the 10th, remember X stands for 10, excommunicates Luther, which means he's like, Luther, kick rocks. Okay. Also, the Holy Roman Emperor during this time, who's aligned with the Pope, Charles V, is going to summon him to the Diet in Worms. And so pretty much they're going to draft an edict, which is a document that declares him an outlaw. Just like with Jesus of Nazareth, though, anytime anybody tries to suppress a movement, that just means it's going to grow further. And so his ideas continue to spread, and by 1530, Lutheranism is official, like totally a religion. Okay, that's Charles V. And so Charles V tries to suppress Lutherans. Remember, they follow Luther in Germany, but the princes, because Germany's broken into like 4 sectors during this time, and it's ruled by 4 brothers or 4 princes. Hence, they protest, and so that's where you get the Protestant. And so there will be a spread of Protestantism. You have Ulrich Zwingli, who is going to move the church to Switzerland. He creates a theocracy, which is a government ruled by religion. And him and Martin Luther aren't going to agree. He's going to believe that he twists the word of God, and so Zwingli's ultimately going to get killed by some Catholics, though. And then you have John Knox. He brought Protestantism to Scotland. And so the Protestant branch in Scotland will be called Presbyterians, so they're Presbyterianism. Then you have John Calvin. He believed in the idea of predestination. So he said that God already knew who will be saved from the start. And he went to Switzerland. He believed that church was mandatory, but they had a strict church. Like you couldn't dance, no feasting, no singing, and women couldn't wear jewelry. And then you have the Anabaptists, which were a group of people that were re-baptized adults. So the Catholic Church did not believe in being baptized as an adult. They baptized their children or christened them in youth, like in their infancy. And so they did not like that adults were baptizing or being baptized. And so they were illegal during this time. And that is the Reformation.